So this is an attempt to. I was sitting in bed last night and I was looking at all my monies and trying to figure out whether I would have enough monies and if I didn't, how I could get more. Um, and as I was going through that process, I thought to myself, hey, what if I tried to keep a vlog of what I'm doing musically and gave myself a way of vocally sorting out what it is I want to do creatively and what I'm happy with and what I'm not happy with. And because I find that I'm the kind of person who needs to talk things through before they make sense. And I don't have a lot of friends right now who I can talk to in great detail about what it is that I want to do with music. So right now, I work as a music teacher. I have 10 private students. I go to their homes and teach half-hour lessons once a week. 9 of my students are violin students, and 1 student is a piano student. I've also taught guitar in the past. I've also taught saxophone and trumpet, but I don't play saxophone and trumpet, and that's an interesting story for another time. But right now, my sole source of income is through teaching private lessons. And I've been doing this for about a year and a half, I guess. I live in San Antonio, Texas. I moved here January of 2014, which is a little over 2 years ago. And before that, I had been studying. I was at Brigham Young University in Utah. I finished 4 years of school, but I didn't actually graduate. When I went to school, I had it set in my mind that I was going to pursue a more or less traditional male profession, that I would be some kind of, I guess I was looking into IT and things related to that. My dad is a doctor, and I think I'd figured out I didn't really want to be a doctor. I didn't want to go to med school. But I thought, I want a job where I show up to an office and I punch in and do a job, and then at the end of the day punch out, and they send me a check every 2 weeks. And that was the path that I had assumed would work out. But the longer I went and the more I tried to go down that path, the more I found that I was extremely unhappy for more reasons than one. It wasn't just that. I had some lingering, unresolved emotional pain from a couple things in high school that I just thought would eventually dissolve, and it turns out they didn't. Anyway, so I made it through about 3 years of school, and during that third year, the whole time I was in school, I was always uncertain. I always felt like I was trying to make the choice that made sense, but I always felt like in making that choice, I was ignoring what it was I wanted to do. And of course, I thought, well, who doesn't want to do something cooler than work in IT or whatever? I didn't understand that the level of sort of general dissatisfaction that people have in life was far more manageable and negotiable than the level of dissatisfaction I was experiencing. But within, at the end of sort of that third year, I was failing all of my classes, and I just couldn't, my ability to do anything that I had been able to do previously just wasn't there. I couldn't focus. Reading was extremely difficult. I even got to a point where I didn't really like playing music. It was just, everything sort of crumbled around me, and I didn't know what to do about it. So I ended up seeing a therapist briefly, and at his suggestion, almost, I ended up dropping out, and that was an extremely liberating choice for me. I know a lot of people might look at that and think, how could dropping out of college be a wise choice for someone? But uh, I don't regret it. 3.5, 4 years later now, I can't remember my timeline exactly, but it's not a decision I regret. I think I had hit a wall, and the longer I stayed there, the more I was just going to keep bashing my head into it. Anyway, so that was, let me think. I think that was October of 2012 that I dropped out. So now I live in San Antonio. I moved here after I floated around Utah for about a year. Lived with my brother in Saudi Arabia for 3 months. And then I have a sister who lives here, so I moved here and kind of crashed at her place for about a year while I did my best to get my feet back under me and figure out what I was going to do. She is also a teacher. She teaches violin, and she'd been playing weddings and things, so I started, playing gigs with her, and eventually I started accompanying her to teach her group classes and things, and I thought, I could be a teacher. Why don't I teach? That was about 1.5 years ago that I started teaching, and soon after that I was able to move out of my sister's house. I now live in an apartment with 2 roommates. I'm making enough to squeak by, and it's alright. Anyway, that's my history. So right now I'm at a place where the future is very much up in the air for me. I've more or less come to a place where I've realized I can't do something that isn't music. I just, I care too much about it. I know too much about it, and my intuition and my personality, I think, lend themselves to creative pursuits with which I have a greater degree of control than if I had to. I can't work for someone else. I don't know how to do that. I have to be my own boss, more or less. At least for now. I don't know. Maybe that is more flexible than I realize, but so I'm at a place now where I'm looking forward and I'm thinking, okay, well, what form is this going to end up taking? And there's sort of 3 ways I can see it going. One is I would actually go back to school and get a music education degree, and I would probably teach orchestra. My history is mainly with classical music. I started playing violin when I was about 6. I started playing piano about 2 years later. Took organ lessons for a couple of years. So I basically spent all of my years growing up playing classical music on multiple different instruments in multiple different ensembles. Anyway, so I was about 15 when I realized, when music kind of stopped being this thing that I just did because I'd always done it. I grew up with I have 4 older siblings and all of them played music, so growing up I was like, well, this is just a thing that everyone does, So around the time I was 15 was when it really became personal for me, and when I discovered that there was something very, very deep in that for me, which was both really thrilling and really scary, because up until that point I'd sort of had this image in my head that it was what I tried to pursue when I got to college, but it was the sense that my dad has provided a very good life for us, and certain kind of profession enables that sort of lifestyle, and I should do the same for my future supposed family, which I always imagined I would have. And then discovering that I had this very deep, very profound love of music really clashed with that image and that thing that I had always imagined I wanted. And it isn't until recently that I've been able to reconcile that love with that I've been able to take those two disparate things and decide, which one does it make more sense to go for. Um, anyway, so it was about that time that I started to really, really love playing music. But it was still all classical music, which was very confusing to me because I knew if I was going to be a musician, I wasn't going to be a professional. I wasn't going to be I wasn't going to be like a professional pianist or a professional violinist or anything. I just knew that that wasn't the venue that I wanted to um, spend most of my time in. Um, but I didn't know how to do anything else. So at the time, it was very confusing, and I kind of didn't know what to do with it. And that is partly why I didn't stick to it more consistently into my early 20s and my time in college, because I thought, well, if I'm not going to be a classical musician, then I guess it's just going to be a hobby sort of thing. Um, it wasn't until I started learning guitar and started trying to work on my singing voice and songwriting and things like that that I started to think maybe there is another way I could make this work. Um, anyway, so there are three ways that I kind of see my life playing out. One is that I get an education degree and I teach orchestra, while that would allow me some sort of semblance of a normal life in which, if I wanted to, I could settle down, um, theoretically support a family, and things like that, which would be great. Um, I don't not want those things. I would love to have those things, but it has to be in a way that works with who I am and what I want. The other way I see it going is I would get into composition and do more film score type things. I've always been interested in learning how to do MIDI, and I've always had these musical ideas floating around in my head that are sort of abstract and formless at the moment, but I've always thought I would be thrilled to be able to bring that kind of expression to realize that and bring it out of my head and into other people's heads. So I could see myself going that route and studying composition and maybe being a film score composer or doing ad jingles or whatever. That could also be really awesome. The third way I see it going is more the singer-songwriter type thing, which is right now the most accessible to me, even though it's something that I probably have the least experience with and exposure to. I've written 2 songs so far. Both of them were kind of like just delivered to me, which is not something you can really rely on as a professional. But by that, what I mean is sort of I heard somebody else's music, or I heard something going on, and then just this song composed itself in my mind more or less. And it wasn't quite that easy, but more or less it was just sort of preformed in my mind, and the right things triggered it, and then I was able to bring it out. And I haven't found myself really able to compose outside of that state of mind yet, and so that is slightly more chaotic and less reliable until I can learn how to either trigger that more often or just have a different process. I don't know. But so those are the 3 different ways I kind of see my future going right now, and it's a little bit up in the air, and I'm okay with that as long as I've got enough money to get by, and I still find that I'm making progress as a human being. I'm pretty happy with that. So I wanted to talk about sort of my creative influences and what has led me to where I'm at. Speaking in terms of classical music, so there was one piece of music that really triggered this sort of discovery of how much I like and love music. It was Chopin Etude. It was Opus 10, I think, whatever the first set is, but number 3 in E major. It was the first time I ever heard classical music that really, really just kind of got me at my core. Um, and having heard that, I thought there's other music like this out there, and you can make music like this. But there's sort of just a very poignant, um, emotive beauty in that. And even if I end up not making classical music or film scores or whatever like that, I'm still very much driven by that sort of sense of um, sort of emancipating beauty, um, where you don't have to think about it, you don't have to wonder about it. It just it just takes you. I'm very driven by that aesthetic. In terms of pop music or contemporary music or whatever, I think the two biggest influences on me, I mean, there are many, but I think the first time I was maybe 13, I don't know, I was in high school. It was when John Mayer's first album came out, and I remember hearing his music and thinking, like, it was the first time I'd heard pop music and been like, if I were going to make pop music, this is the kind I would make. Um, Cause when I was I was born in '87, so I grew up more or less during like the late '90s, early 2000s, and during that time, like hip hop and gangsta rap really dominated the radio. And as an upper middle class white kid in Minnesota, that didn't appeal to me at all. But I thought, well, this is what cool music is. So I had I thought that music was so stupid and vapid, and I didn't understand the aesthetic um, at all. And I still think gangster rap is really stupid and vapid. Let me clarify that. I'm much more open to hip hop at this point. I think there's some really, really, really excellent hip hop out there. I'm not super exposed, so I'm not gonna pretend like yeah I'm the cool kid who I don't. But there's been a couple things I've listened to. I've been like wow that was really awesome. Um, anyway, so John Mayer was the first time I'd heard music, and here's the thing about John Mayer's music that a lot of people don't know. Like a lot of people look at John Mayer and they're like, well he's a douche, so I don't like his music. I'm like, look, I'm not hiring him to babysit my kids. I'm trying to learn how to play guitar the way he does. Like I'm not trying to. Anyway. Um, there's, I don't want to say sophistication because that almost oversells it a little bit, but there's a degree of sophistication to his music. He found a way to combine interesting musical ideas and interesting sort of abstract lyrics in a way that is still very accessible. And to me, that was really appealing because I thought, well, you can either make dumb music that everyone will listen to, or you can make smart music that is dense and impenetrable and only other musicians will. I'd always had a dichotomy, and hearing his music was the first time I thought you can bring those two things together. And then later on, there's other music that I listened to. Growing up, there was other pop music. I don't know, when I was in high school, I liked Coldplay, I liked David Gray, I liked the Goo Goo Dolls, I liked Dave Matthews Band. When I was in middle school, I loved Jewel, which sounds funny, I think, to people, but there was other music that I liked as well. But his stuff was the first stuff I heard that really kind of made me think there's a kind of music you could make that people would listen to and you would be satisfied making it. And then the next artist that really kind of hit me was Jeff Buckley. I didn't start listening to his stuff until I was in college, I think. And some people don't know who he is. Jeff Buckley does the solo electric guitar version of Leonard Cohen's song Hallelujah. A lot of people are familiar with that song because it was used in Shrek, but it was actually Rufus Wainwright who recorded that version. In my mind, the Jeff Buckley version blows that one out of the water. No, I mean, whatever. If you like it, that's fine. To me, though, Jeff Buckley's version just kind of hits in a way that that is on a different level. And so after hearing that song and listening to some of his other music, he was the first person to show me like how intense and how he was I when I listen to Jeff Buckley's music, the thing that strikes me is that he is in no way limited to one style. He covers an incredibly broad range of genres and styles, and um, but he does it in a way. Again, there's a certain, to me at least, there's a certain accessibility to his music, but that accessibility doesn't confine him in any way. But also, there's a very real intensity to his music that I've never really heard in another artist. I feel like when I listen to him sing, every single word has a story. Every single note has some kind of meaning to it, and you might not hear that when you listen to it. But to me, it was just hearing that that was even possible um, made me think I would love to be able to make music like that if I could. Um, so Jeff Buckley and John Mayer, and the funny thing is I don't listen to. I guess I still listen to both of them, um, but right now I'm exploring a lot of other things, which I'll get into later. But anyway, that's sort of my musical history in a nutshell, and where I'm at and what it is I'm trying to do. Um, anyway, thanks for watching. Check out my songs. Leave some feedback if you'd like. Send me an email if you want to collaborate on something. Anyway, see you around.